to Mrs. Ann Jordan, to Vicki Jordan Adams, to the entire family and friends gathered near and far. We are here to witness to our faith and to celebrate the life of Mr. Vernon Jordan. We gather acknowledging our great loss, but we also come with the belief that God will grant us grace, that in our pain we will find comfort, and in our sorrow, hope. We are ever mindful of the difficulty of this moment, not only because of our grief, but also because of the impossibility of capturing the full essence and impact of this extraordinary life in the time allotted. Mr. Jordan was a genius in his ability to capture moments like this. I had the honor over many years of being a sounding board as he was crafting his remarks to speak to such moments. I know how carefully he chose his words. And I can still hear his voice ringing in my ears as he spoke from this very pulpit. I hear him praying, God of our weary years, God of our silent tears. I can hear him saying, mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. I can still hear him quoting his mother, son, if you trust him, if you just trust him, he will take care of you. I hear him quoting his father, saying, son, you can come home now. I know he loved to quote his dear friend, the Reverend Dr. Gardner C. Taylor. Dr. Taylor would affirm the difficulty of this moment and lead us into the celebration of life by saying, trying to measure the life and accomplishments of Vernon Jordan is as if one would take a thimble and try to empty an ocean. It would be as if one sought to measure the expanse of the heavens with the span of the human hand. Dr. Taylor would say, something vast and powerful and good has passed from us. It is as though a mighty oak has fallen, leaving an empty and glaring space against the sky where he stood. A mighty oak has fallen. But what he has left us will live on forever. With this understanding, let us pray. Most gracious and loving God, before any human hands touched us, you already knew us. You were closer to us than even our own thoughts. You, oh God, can feel our feelings. You allow yourself to be touched by our sorrow. You know the places where we hurt. Places that are too sensitive for human words to comfort. Because you know us. And because you love us. We come to you for our comfort. We come to you for our strength. We come giving thanks for the life, for the gift of Vernon E. Jordan, Jr. As we come, oh God, we place in your hands the Jordan family. Although they were called to share him with us and with the nation, he was a husband, a father, a grandfather, an uncle, and so much more to them. May they feel our appreciation. And may they sense your love and comfort on this day and in the days and nights ahead. And for us, oh God, we who called Vernon Jordan our friend, our confidant, our colleague, our mentor, we who ran to him for advice and support, may we be comforted. May we be comforted with the understanding that we were blessed to know this incredible human being, this mighty oak, this prince of a man whose life reminded us that we live great lives not because of what we possess, but because of what we believe in, because of what we pursue, and because of what we cherish. When Mr. Jordan walked among us, he gave to us the very best of what you placed in his heart, his mind, and his soul, to uplift and open doors for others. And through the difficult and trying times, he never grew tired in his well-doing. He waited on you, O God, and his strength was renewed. He mounted up with wings as eagles. He ran and did not grow weary. He walked and did not faint. And now he has found a resting place with you. And in this we find our comfort. We thank you, O God. We thank you for the life, the legacy, and the greatness of Vernon Jordan. We thank you for what our eyes will see, our ears will hear, and our hearts will feel as we celebrate his life together. Now drop thy still dews of quietness until all our striving cease. Take from our souls the strain and the stress, and let our ordered lives confess the beauty of thy peace. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Dean Richardson, for that prayer. And thank you all for being here today. I welcome you all to Howard University, an institution that helped mold the life we gather here to celebrate today. To the Jordan family, the entire Howard community, we hold you close in our hearts today during this difficult time. Even on this somber occasion, I take particular pride in acknowledging the presence of the 49th Vice President of the United States, Ms. Kamala Harris. I also extend a special welcome to someone who is no stranger to Howard University, the 42nd President of the United States, President Bill Clinton. And I would like to acknowledge his family, both Chelsea and Secretary Clinton. I want to acknowledge the presence of our distinguished mayor, Muriel Bowser, who you'll hear from. In many ways, Howard University was founded for a person like Vernon Jordan, Jr. Our motto is truth and service, ideals that Mr. Jordan lived by. At its founding 154 years ago this week, Howard's motto was equal rights and knowledge for all, recognizing the transformative power of education on a people just beginning to taste freedom. On March 2nd, 1867, the 17th President of the United States signed a charter to start Howard University. He would go on to veto the first Reconstruction Acts, because he did not believe that freed blacks deserved an education or a place in the society. He would start the university that would send the first black woman to the White House. The irony in that was never lost on Vernon Jordan. A Howard education truly comes alive when the training received here is actively used to change the world. And Mr. Jordan used his training faithfully to do just that. Today we are gathered to celebrate his life, a task that is both simple and difficult. It is simple because Vernon Jordan was a man of tremendous accomplishment, influence, and impact. He had a clock that clearly did not just simply have the same number of hours in a day that the rest of ours had. The legacy of his life's efforts are vast and undeniable. But it is difficult because our grief at his passing threatens to overwhelm us. Vernon Jordan was more father than father figure to me. Everything from showing me how to change my pocket square to the blueberry muffin toasted with butter. He treated me like a son and showed me so many reasons why I should always feel loved. He helped persuade me to become the president of Howard University, an institution that he loved and cherished and worked so hard to improve. And many of you I have been introduced to you by Mr. Jordan with him saying the following: I chaired the search committee that looked for this president, and we looked under every rock and behind every tree. What I didn't realize was that he knew every rock and every tree. And so he literally was the person who connected all of us to each other. He lived a great life. And for his legacy to prosper, we have to remember who he was and what he stood for. We have to pick up his torch and carry it even further and pass it along to the generation that follows. The most common call I received from him was about a student who he felt should be at Howard University. I would scramble and call my director of admissions, assuming that this was a senator's son or a CEO's niece, only to find out that while Mr. Jordan was walking through Manhattan, he ran into this student who recognized him and then told him that he was interested in Howard University. He gave our alma mater shape and purpose. At the highest levels, his service on the board of trustees and insights as an advisor to me and others have provided Howard with a strategic direction for our growth and continuous evolution as an institution. But just as importantly, he encouraged us to love and work and be diligent about everything that Howard University is about. Even now, in this moment of social distancing and online learning, it becomes even clearer that Howard University is not simply a collection of buildings. Because Howard is essentially a transformative idea that cannot be bound by brick and mortar or the gates of this hilltop, Mr. Jordan represented that very powerful idea even as he transitions from this earthly home, in the words of Acts 7, to a building not made by hands. So we thank Mr. Jordan for his service, and we could think of no more fitting way than renaming our law school library as the Vernon E. Jordan Jr. Esquire Law Library. There's no irony lost on the fact that his book, Vernon Can Read, will take a prominent place in that very library. He often eulogized others as sweet princes. Well, today, Mr. Jordan, you will always be the sweetest of our princes. So I thank you for the life that you lived, the example that you set, and we promise you to honor your legacy by our deeds. May you rest in peace.
Good afternoon. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C. On behalf of all Washingtonians, I wish to express my deep condolences to the passing of your beloved husband, father, grandfather, and friend. As I called him, Mr. Jordan. This past year, many of us in leadership positions have faced a challenge that is not new, but is uniquely present. And that is the challenge of giving people a sense of hope. We have been challenged to provide a sense of hope throughout this pandemic that it will one day end, and I do truly believe we are close to that day. We have been challenged to provide a sense of hope that racial injustices as old as this nation, many of the same injustices that Mr. Jordan was fighting for in the 50s and 60s, will also too end one day. And we have been challenged even to provide a sense of hope that our democracy, as imperfect as it may be, is not broken, and that we can and we will protect it and expand our most precious American rights, and that's the right to vote. When I think of Mr. Jordan, I think of a man who was expert in providing that sense of hope, but even more expert in providing a blueprint for putting it into action. He showed us that we don't have to choose between fighting for civil rights and racial justice and charting new paths for people, especially Black people in the business community. Vernon was a man whose principles were well known, and he carried those principles into every aspect of his work in life and into the conversations he had with world leaders, friends, and even mayors like me. For that, we are grateful. For the hope Mr. Jordan gave us, we are grateful. As we mourn, please rely on your strength, love, and the support of your family and friends. And those are family, those are friends near and far. Vernon leaves behind a tremendous legacy of strength, perseverance, compassion, and love, which will not soon be forgotten. May his memory always be a blessing and a profound guide for each of us, tomorrow and every day thereafter. God bless you.
Vernon Jordan Jr. traveled on his beloved choo-choo train from Washington to New York and back again many, many times. He now travels through space and through time. He travels toward that inextinguishable light. Travel on, blessed ancestor, travel on. From the 139th Psalm. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down. You are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so that I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the night is not dark to you, for the night to you is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. For it was you who formed my inward parts, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. I try to count them. They are more than the sand. I come to my end, and I am still with you. From the Apostles' letter to the church at Corinth, the first letter, chapter 15. But in fact, Christ has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have died. For since death came through a human being, the resurrection of the dead has also come through a human being. For as all die in Adam, so all will be made alive in Christ. But each in his own order, Christ the first fruits, then at his coming those who belong to Christ. Then comes the end, when he hands over the reign to God the Father after he has destroyed every ruler and every authority and every power, for he must reign until he has put all enemies under his feet. The last enemy to be destroyed is death. But someone will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body do they come? Fool, what you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And as for what you sow, you do not sow the body that is to be, but a bare seed, perhaps of wheat or of some other grain, but God gives it a body as God has chosen, and to each kind of seed its own body. So it is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable. What is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown as a physical body. It is raised as a spiritual body. If there is a physical body, there is also a spiritual body. For this perishable body must put on imperishability, and this mortal body must put on immortality. And when this perishable body puts on imperishability, and this mortal body puts on immortality, then the saying that is written will be fulfilled. Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my beloved Mrs. Jordan, my beloved Vicky, be steadfast, immovable, always excelling in the work of the Lord, because you know that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. Travel on, blessed ancestor, travel on.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicings rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast.
We'd like to thank Reverend Moss for sending us a recorded prayer, and we look forward to having it be included in the final version of this service. Thank you, Reverend Richardson, Dr. Frederick, Mayor Bowser, Reverend Lamar, Mr. President, Madam Secretary, Madam Vice President, distinguished guests, and beloved friends and family. My name is Vicki Jordan Adams, and my father is Vernon E. Jordan, Jr. I first met my father in Atlanta on Burbank Drive. He lifted me up in his big, strong arms and carried me around the world. I learned to trust that bright, beautiful smile draped between those high, chiseled cheekbones. And I learned to read the delight, the fear, the anger, the wonder, and love that blazed constantly through his big, radiant eyes. We went through a lot together, he, my mother Shirley Yarbrough, and I. My parents raised me to believe that they were my very best friends. So I told them everything. Much to the chagrin of my cousins and my friends, They knew as much gossip about me and my friends as they knew about their own friends. My unbridled candor likely embarrassed them, but honestly, what are best friends for? You tell them everything. So here we are, much sooner than we would ever have anticipated, saying goodbye to a giant of a man, the most charming man in Washington, according to the Washington Post. Everyone loved Vernon, but no one owned him. He really didn't belong to anyone. He belonged to God. He belonged to the struggle. He belonged to the people, rich and powerful, and ordinary working people. He could converse as easily with the entrepreneurs at the shoe shine stands as he did with the CEOs of American Express, Ryder, or Barrick Gold. He lived his life his way, always remaining loyal to the Lord, his mother, and his country. As evidence of that, I would like for you to meet the extraordinary care team that helped Ann, Tony, Mercer, Janice, and I care for him and our parents over these years. And I would ask each of them to stand, please. Abina Amoa, Marva Anderson, Raquel Martinez, Marie Louis, Lizelle Legat, Arlene Molandras, who is at home keeping everything ready for lunch, and Raymond Sismayet, and Henry Bonsu, Aaron, if he's here somewhere, and of course, the ever-present Gail Laughlin. We have been blessed. Yes, thank you. We have been blessed with this caring, thoughtful, loyal, and professional support system, and we will always be incredibly grateful for their hard work and dedication. You are the people that my father fought for his entire life. And if you'll allow me, I'd like to read from a letter that we received. To Ann, Vicki, Tony, Mercer, Janice, and everyone gathered to celebrate the extraordinary life of Vernon Jordan. Vernon personified elegance and grace under pressure. He was an American original, one of those giants on whose shoulders we stood, and for me and Michelle, he was also a wise and loyal friend. I've heard, growing up, that Vernon's mother would always tell him, don't get too big for your britches. If you got good grades, don't get too big for your britches. If you got a girlfriend, don't get too big for your britches. Until she could say it no more, Vernon once wrote, that was her refrain. Vernon never forgot it. He was on the front lines of the movement. On Wall Street, he spoke up in rooms where folks like him had been shut out for generations. In politics, his wisdom, warmth, and good humor made him a valued counsel to leaders in both parties. Vernon's friendship, counsel, and example made me a better president, and every time he stopped by the White House or we heard his smooth baritone on the other end of the phone, we took it as a gift. My hope is that his absence can be a call to all of us, a reminder that our work remains unfinished. Because I think even his mother would agree that with Vernon's passing, we've all been left with some big britches to fill. May Vernon's guiding spirit continue to light the way for us all. Sincerely, Barack Obama. So, as I conclude, one of my very favorite gospel songs is a song called I Can Only Imagine. This week, after seeing the incredible outpouring of care and condolences, I can only imagine. What if Dad had not only been the president of the Black folks, which I really viewed as his role as the leader of the National Urban League, but what if he had been president of all of the people? What would the world be like? Would we have more economic equality? The Voting Rights Act would be a given, a no-brainer. The women's rights movement, a given. With all the love, sadness, reverence, and respect that we have experienced here, how would it have been different if in his time, in his generation, he had actually been a president? He would have served if called, and I can only imagine how much more beautiful our country would be. Good night, Daddy-O, and may flights of angels see thee home.
In memory of our beloved brother, Vernon Jordan. To Mrs. Ann Jordan, beloved, devoted, and creative companion. Children, Vicky, Tony, Mercer, Janice, beloved 9 grandchildren. We gather in the language of the poet with a tear and a smile, and the world understands the tear, and heaven and earth understand the smile. We celebrate the life of a leader, a prophet of social justice, a liberator, a brother in the great struggle for justice, has joined that great cloud of witnesses and now smiles on earth upon all of us for the rest of our days and generations yet to be born. I met Vernon some 60 years ago. However, Vernon and my wife Edwina grew up together in University Homes, one of our nation's first government-sponsored housing projects. The uniqueness about that housing project, it was surrounded by great colleges, historically black colleges and a university, all in walking distance, and their influence, their care, and their character and excellence overflowed from campus into the housing project in a very special way, touching the lives especially of the youth and children of those decisive days. I met Vernon when I was a graduate student, having completed my seminary work and still going for special studies and fully participating in the Atlanta student sit-in movement. And as we were going to jail and marching and sitting in and protesting, we needed legal support, and we were blessed to have one of the greatest civil rights lawyers in the world, in the person of Donald L. Hollowell. And Attorney Hollowell had brought some young, newly minted law assistants, one of which was Vernon Jordan, who came in from Howard University's law school and took on his responsibilities with Attorney Hollowell. And Vernon told me that he was working for the amazing salary of $35 a week. And in order to supplement his salary by daylight, he took on the responsibility of working by moonlight and starlight and eternal light as an assistant caterer. The president and founder of the catering company was not only founder, but president and CEO and treasurer and secretary of the firm. And she was Vernon's beloved mother. So he worked by sunlight as a lawyer, and by starlight and moonlight and inner light as an assistant caterer at night in order to make ends meet and start a family. As a lawyer, one of his most dangerous and lasting assignments was to accompany Charlene Hunter Galt and support Hamilton Holmes as the first African-American students to enter the University of Georgia. And when they arrived at the university for Charlene to begin her studies, they were met by a vicious, angry, murderous mob. But Vernon walked beside Charlene through dangers, toils, and snares, through the valley and the shadow of death. And both students were enrolled and graduated and went on to great accomplishments. Vernon went on to become a distinguished lawyer, and on his path became state representative of the NAACP and a leader in the Southern Regional Council, and then the first and founding head of the Voter Education Project, succeeded by the late John Lewis. Vernon went on to become leader of the United Negro College Fund, and from there to the Urban League, succeeding one of his mentors, Whitney Young. And in that position, with great achievements and great success, a racist would-be murderer shot him with a high-powered rifle and left a hole in his back larger than an adult fist. However, God was with him. I visited him in the hospital in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and prayed with him. Two other things happened on the West Coast with him daily, and on the East Coast, the late Dr. Gardner C. Taylor was praying with him. He recovered, finished his assignment with the Urban League, and went on to take a position of national and global responsibility in the legal and investment world, and kept opening doors for others to succeed. And he followed throughout his life a career of mountain climbing, mountain claiming, and mountain moving. But while he was climbing, he brought others. As he claimed certain mountains, he made room for others. And he also used his energy and strength to move mountains for others. And the other day, Vernon Jordan spoke with his life, not in words, but with his life and soul, and said, "Lord, I've done what you told me to do. I've been living for a cause stronger than death, greater than hate, more powerful than racism, a cause more lasting than narrow partisan self-interest. Lord, I've done what you told me to do." And God said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Come and join that great cloud of witnesses eternally." Amen.
Thank you for inviting me to say a few words about my partner, my mentor, and most importantly, my friend, Vernon Jordan. Anne, Vicki, and the whole Jordan family, as well as my fellow speakers, I can tell you this is an honor to be here. So my Vernon life began more than a decade before Vernon even knew he was in my life. You see, Vernon delivered my commencement address at the University of Pennsylvania on May 18, 1981, with 23,000 others in attendance, including his beloved daughter, Vicki. In addition to the soaring words, what I remember most was how I felt. I turned to the person next to me and I said, "I'm going to be president of the United States." Imagine that in 1981, 40 years ago, being a 21-year-old girl and thinking you could be president. Such was the gift of Vernon. I have shared with many of you the pivotal moment in my life 13 years later when I joined Aiken Gump and introduced myself to Mr. Jordan. I told him he had been my commencement speaker and that I remembered every word he had said. He took me by the hand and he said, "Young lady, I don't know who you are or what you're doing here, but you are my new best friend." And that moment changed everything because Vernon actually meant it. It began almost 30 years of a friendship that has been one of the greatest gifts of my life. What did it mean to have Vernon in your life? It meant loyalty, wisdom, guidance, advice, and most importantly, a belief in you that knew no bounds. Once you were in his orbit, it was all-encompassing. Early on in my Vernon life, my twin sister bravely went up to Vernon at a fancy Metropolitan Museum event and introduced herself. He literally lifted Janice off her feet to embrace her. Such was the enveloping nature of his warmth. And the next day, it wasn't just my twin sister who called me to say, "I met Vernon Jordan." It was Vernon calling to tell me, "I met your twin sister." A few years later, I raced home from work to grab my girls, then 8 and 13, to take them to Barnes & Noble. I wanted to attend Vernon's book signing for Vernon Can Read. I waited to be the last in line so I wouldn't be rushed. And it was a long line. It finally came to an end around 9:30, and I could tell he was glad I had come. There was that twinkle in his eye and that amazing smile. But then that twinkle turned to a scowl when he checked his watch. He said, "Cooper Smith, what are you doing with those girls out here so late on a school night?" And it didn't help that my daughter added, "And she didn't even give us dinner." Okay, that didn't work for Vernon. He looked at me, as he does when he means business, and said, "Cooper Smith, you get those girls home right now and you feed them some dinner." And after a hug for the three of us, that is just what I did. I confess that for a young lawyer, having Vernon as a mentor was thrilling. It was a glimpse of a different life, a glamorous life, a life I had not known. Vernon would call on no notice and would say, "Cooper Smith, get downstairs to the lobby. You're going to walk with me too, and you can fill in the blank." I remember to a restaurant where he was having lunch with Barbara Walters, to the Waldorf Astoria where he was being honored. And on those walks, person after person on the street stopped to shake his hand. Executives, young people, delivery people, every stripe of life would stop him. And the amazing thing, as you keep hearing, is that Vernon stopped for every one of those people. In one of the stupidest things I have ever said in my entire life, and on one of those walks, I looked at Vernon and I said, "This is so cool. It's like walking with a celebrity." And Vernon looked at me and said, "Cooper Smith, I am a celebrity." Point well taken. I realize now that every one of those walks, every entreaty to come to his office now, every invitation, every gentle rebuke, every tale of injustice addressed were all part of how he nurtured me, how he taught me, and how he developed my moral compass so that I now have the great privilege of being the chairperson of Aiken Gump, his great law firm. He parted the waters of my firm to make this path available to me, but equally importantly, he parted the waters of my own mind to allow me to see myself in a place I wouldn't have thought possible without his empowering force. And my story is the story of so many others. It is hard to absorb that my life, knowing Vernon Jordan, started with him delivering my commencement speech, and now I am here saying goodbye. Speaking today will always be one of the greatest honors of my life. A book I read recently by Sigrid Nunez brought Vernon to mind immediately. When did he plant the roses in full magnificent bloom now, the red and the white, a fragrance to make you go, ah. I think how much they must have pleased him year after year and made him proud. What we miss, what we lose, and what we mourn, isn't this what truly makes us who deep down we are? Vernon, I miss you, and I deeply mourn that you are gone. You planted so many roses, and they are in magnificent bloom now everywhere. Thank you, and rest in peace, my very dear friend.
May the work I've done speak for me. May the work I've done speak for me. When I'm resting in my grave and there's nothing else to be said, may the work I've done speak for me. May the life I live speak for me. May the life I live speak for me. When I've done the best I can, and my friends, they don't understand, may the life I live speak for me. The work I've done seems so small. Sometimes it seems like I've done nothing at all. When I've done all I can do, Lord, I'm leaving it up, I'm leaving it up, I'm leaving it up to you. May the work I've done speak for me. The work I've done sometimes seems so small. You know, sometimes it seems like I've done nothing at all. But when I've come up to my God, I want to hear him say, well done. May the work I've done, may the life I live, hallelujah, and may the service I give, may the work I've done, may the work I've done speak for me.
I want to extend Kathy and my deepest condolences to Anne, who Vernon deeply loved, to his wonderful daughter, Vicky, who was so devoted to him. And thank you, Vicky, for those beautiful words about your father. To Mercer, Tony, and Janice, whom together with Vicky provided Vernon with strong support, compassion, and love, and to all of his beloved grandchildren. Let me attempt the impossible task of paying adequate tribute to Vernon Jordan. He was larger than life. He was majestic, but he was down to earth. To me, he was an American original, and he was truly authentic. I very proudly hold myself out as a mentee and friend of Vernon Jordan. What Vernon was able to do in business was transformational. He was the first crossover artist. By this I mean he transitioned from being one of the most important civil rights leaders to the world of business. And he continued his crusade for racial justice and equal opportunity. In a list of successful blacks in corporate America, most of them were influenced by Vernon, and a good number of them were individually mentored by him. He is most responsible for opening the door for blacks in business and also guiding them on the pathway to success. This was not something he talked about to get credit. He made it happen. Vernon also mentored people from all walks of life, and he was a discerning judge of someone's character. He was an amazingly open person. Civility and character were core attributes that he looked for in people. If you had those two attributes, he would help you and be your friend despite any political or ideological disagreements. Vernon was the best friend you could have. He was relentlessly focused on building relationships with people at every level. He brought joy into their lives. He was charismatic, but genuine, and he possessed great wisdom and judgment. A number of CEOs, including me, said, if I have an important decision to make, I'm going to go to Vernon. I will leave you with a personal story and the best advice I received from Vernon. When the American Express board elected me CEO, Vernon passed me a folded note in the boardroom. It read, Ken, if I were in church, I would say, hallelujah, hallelujah. I am so proud. Henceforth, you will always go by Mr. Chairman. And that is the way he always greeted me. The best advice he said to me at least 50 times, Mr. Chairman, we're here because we stand on the shoulders of so many. We have the responsibility to live our life so people will stand on our shoulders. I will end with a passage from the Bible that Vernon once gave to me, the second book of Timothy, chapter 4. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Vernon, no one did it better. God bless you, my mentor and friend.
To Vernon's beloved family, Anne, Vicki, Barry, Mercer, Cindy, Antoinette, Dwight, Janice, and Richard, all of your children, and all of Vernon's extended family and dear friends, we gather today with broken hearts, but with lives and spirits raised up for knowing, loving, and being loved by Vernon E. Jordan, Jr. He was many things to all of us: a giant, imposing, striking statesman, a banker, a lawyer, a civil rights leader, an orator, a wise man, a corporate titan, an advisor, a mentor, a smooth operator. He was beautiful, handsome, extremely well-dressed, always, sexy, and one of my favorites, a crossover artist, thank you, Ken Chenault, a father, husband, and on and on. Vernon was all of that, but the one thing that more than anything else Vernon was for me, he was my friend. I have been blessed and honored to know Vernon for more than 30 years, since I was a young executive at Xerox. Fast forward through my life to today, Vernon took my good life, and through his friendship, fundamentally changed the trajectory of my life from a good life to a great life. Vernon was my very best friend. Vernon surrounded me. He engulfed me, enveloped me, and shone a light on me. He gave everything that he had to offer, everything. A whole unique and generous spirit. Vernon held nothing back from me. He gave me access to amazing people, amazing experiences, great restaurants, his inner circle, his family, and himself. He gave me motivation, comfort, love, and very importantly, perspective. The best way to describe Vernon's form of friendship is through stories. So here are 3 short stories. When I was appointed to CEO of Xerox, you get the message here, Kim, Ken, me. Vernon called me to congratulate me. He already knew what was happening. He was on the board. He was weeping. He said exactly what I needed to hear. He said to me, "Ursula, you are not only smart, you are not only a great operator. Ursula, you are a beautiful person. Keep that. Never lose that beauty." Second, when my husband Lloyd was very ill and hospitalized for 3 weeks in 2013, I was the CEO dealing with more than I could handle. At least I thought it was more than I could handle. And Vernon called me on the first day of Lloyd's hospitalization. "Ursula, your man," that's what he used to call Lloyd, "your man has the best doctors looking after him. He has you looking after him. So I know that he is well covered and will be okay. I am calling to tell you that I am here to look after you and to remind you that the Lord does not give you more than you can handle." He called me every day for the 3 weeks my husband was hospitalized to look after me, every day. And he said the same thing every day: "I am here for you." And finally, when Donald Trump was elected president, I called him in despair, saying, "The worst outcome humanly possible." And he said, "Remember that the guy who shot me was found not guilty. He later admitted to shooting me. So I understand and I'm accustomed to injustice in America. But remember, the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. It may take some time and need a little bit of help. So stop whining and get to work." Mr. Perspective. Friendship is a rare, special gift for one human being to give to another, and Vernon was my very best friend every day. He expected only one thing in return, and that was that I do to others what he has done for me. What an example to follow from your life, your unique and extraordinary life, Vernon. A life of courage, curiosity, loyalty, tenacity, justice, discretion, compassion, generosity, and joy. I know that to feel the love of people whom we love is a fire that feeds for our life. I love you and already miss you terribly. As to Hamlet, so to you, Vernon. From Ursula and all of us, good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
to President and Mrs. Clinton, Vice President Harris, to Ann and Vicki and the extended Jordan clan, to my friends Janice, Mercer, and Tony. I am honored to be here today. And I'm here today on behalf of my late father and mother, who admired, loved, and worked with Vernon Jordan in the 1960s. And it is through them that at 16 years of age, I met this impressive, this powerful, this authentically black man. And I'm here on behalf of my wife and children, my wife who's covered Vernon on behalf of CBS, my children who know Vernon as the guy with the big house on Martha's Vineyard. But I'm especially here today to bring the prayers of the Urban League family, the National Urban League, because Vernon Jordan served as our 5th president in the challenging days of the 1970s. And from all across the nation over the last several days, we've heard from men and women, young and old, who Vernon's leadership touched. And I'm here today to represent each and every one of them. John Lewis, C.T. Vivian, Hank Aaron, Cicely Tyson, and now Vernon Jordan have been called to traverse the stairway to heaven. And why do we love Vernon Jordan so much? Because he was bold, he was blunt, he was funny, he was smart, he was wise, he was authentically black, and he could cuss. But he cussed with melody, with harmony, and with rhythm. That's the Vernon we know and the Vernon we love. But as we love Vernon, how should we remember Vernon Jordan? His wonderful and powerful accomplishments, from civil rights to the boardrooms, from K Street to Wall Street. We can remember his 80-plus honorary degrees. But I think what we have heard today is that we should remember Vernon Jordan as a man for others. A man who dedicated his life in many ways. He was a man for others in 1961 when he walked those 2 students into a previously segregated University of Georgia. He was a man for others when he steered the voter education project, the United Negro College Fund, and became president of the National Urban League, all before he reached the age of 35. And as a man for others at the National Urban League, he took us to the pinnacle in workforce and job training. He created the State of Black America report when he heard President Ford give his State of the Union address, and Senator Edmund Muskie, the Democratic response, and never once mentioned urban America or Black America or poverty or civil rights. And Vernon's exact words, excuse me in the presence of the Lord, was, "I'll create my own damn report." And the State of Black America was born. As president of the National Urban League, he ushered in a new generation of activist leaders at the local level, and his influence remains with us today. But he wasn't done. He wasn't done. He continued to be a man for others as he joined a prestigious law firm, as he joined the Lazard investment banking firm. And as you've heard from Ursula and Ken and Ms. Cooper Smith, everywhere he went, he was unselfish in giving of his time, his energy, and his wisdom, a man for others. And everywhere he went, while he may have been the first, he didn't go there alone. And he may have been the one that opened the door, but he made sure it didn't close behind him so that successive generations of so many of us could walk through those doors. Vernon Jordan must be remembered for, yes, being that celebrity, for, yes, being that beautiful man, for, yes, being that witty person, for, yes, being that brilliant advisor. But he must be remembered as a man for others. And as a man for others, his wisdom, his wit is now imbued in each and every one of us. He would say, my dear friends, don't mourn me, celebrate my life. He would say, my dear friends, make sure you carry on. So today, I stand here to say, Vernon, our friend, our mentor, our brother, our leader, our king, may you rest in peace and rest in power.
Sing about amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Twas grace that bought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody that he is traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a Christian, art, if I can bring back beauty to a world of want, if I can spread some sunshine as the master taught, then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. If I can help somebody as I travel alone, then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be
First, I would like to take my mask off. I want to thank LaFrederick Coxon for those wonderful songs. He has lifted this service. President Frederick, Dean Richardson, thank you for having us all back to Vernon's alma mater, Vice President's alma mater, and soon to be the home of the Vernon Jordan School of Law. That's my kind of law. We thank all of you. I have to say to Reverend Lamar, he loved Metropolitan. And as you know, I had a service there once a long time ago that was pretty important to me. And I want to use Howard and Metropolitan for what I would like to say today about Vernon. First, to Ann and Vicki and Barry and Tony and Dwight and Janice and Richard and Mercer and Cindy and all those wonderful grandkids. I thank you for making his life beautiful to the very end. I thank you for inviting Hillary and Chelsea and me to share so much of it. Maybe you didn't have any choice, but near as I could tell, you didn't put up any objection to Vernon and Ann insisting that we showed up in all the years we were in Washington at the house on Christmas Eve. We had Christmas Eve at the Jordans and opened our presents the next morning. And we'd eat and play and watch the kids grow and then go to the National Cathedral, light our candles, and for me at least, choke on the incense. I like the incense, but it's hard for me to sing Christmas carols with them. Those Christmas Eves were indelible to me because of what I thought I knew then about Vernon Jordan. Mercer reminded me today that Vernon used to joke with me about whichever one of us survived last would have to take the other ones back. We'd have to take care of each other as a service, say all the right things. It's a wager I felt ambivalent about prevailing in. He said, you know, both of us did quite a lot when we were really young, and the real danger is by the time we get around to leaving, nobody will actually remember what we did, and we're just at the mercy of whatever the needs of the moment are. So I'm supposed to stand up here and talk about a man I loved and be grave and proper and ex-presidential. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure you get it. And I feel something more. I woke up 3 times last night. I could hardly sleep. Something happened to me yesterday, and I finally got out of denial and started grieving and celebrating and being grateful. So I want to try to answer the question that you all think you know the answer to. Who was this guy anyway? We know that at a very young age, as my old friend Mayor Morial said, Vernon Jordan had made an impact through the NAACP and the Voter Education Project and the United Negro College Fund and the Urban League. We know that. We know that he helped a lot of people along the way and mentored a lot of people. We know the church meant a lot to him. We know his mother was a great business person. We know because of, if for nothing else, I think the last great speech he gave here, Mr. President, at Rankin Chapel, about 4 angry old men a couple of years ago, that his grandfather said at 70, his great last hope was that at least he'd get to go to the bathroom one time inside in a warm place. We know the man who first said Vernon can read, had a distinguished resume, but a limited soul. We know that George Corley Wallace, after he was shot and paralyzed, had his body frozen, but his mind opened up. And he sent a telegram to Vernon Jordan when he too was shot. And when they finally met face to face afterward, when Vernon got out of the hospital, George Wallace asked Vernon Jordan to hug him. And we know Vernon Jordan, recognizing he had somehow joined the ranks of old men, was telling younger people that it was their turn to step up. And he had done what he could to help, done what he could to encourage, but they had to get the show on the road and keep it there. But who was he? The gift of his friendship came into my life, like a lot of other good things, because of Hillary. She met him at a League of Women Voters convention in 1969. And then she introduced him to me in the early 70s, and then he called me one day in 1977 when I was Attorney General of Arkansas to tell me that he was coming to speak to the local chapter of the Urban League. And he said, you know, I think you should come there and introduce me. After all, he said, besides Georgia and the Supreme Court bar, that's the only other state I'm a member of. It's a long story why not important anymore, and the D.C. bar. And so he said, I appreciate that. Well, look, I'm not an idiot. The last thing in the world he needed was for me to introduce him. He thought if I introduced him, it would help me big time with the people that were in the crowd. And it was my first elected office. So I did. And we continued our friendship, and Hillary did, and Chelsea wasn't around yet. Then in 1980, we had an amazing year. Chelsea was born, Vernon got shot, and I quickly became the youngest former governor in the history of the country, being washed away in the Reagan landslide. He spent almost 100 days in a hospital with wounds that stayed with him for the rest of his life. The only time I ever got mad at anybody talking about Vernon was somebody that said, you know, he really shouldn't have left the movement so soon and gone for the money. And I said, you go get some lead in your back that hurts you every day for 30 years and come by and talk to me about it. And I said, what he did was the next step on his journey. On his journey and his journey for the rest of us. So in 1981, Hillary and Chelsea, who's about to become a year old, or maybe had just become a year old, and I were living in this wonderful old house built in the first decade of the 20th century up on a hill in Little Rock. I was a half-hearted lawyer, and she was a full-throated one, and we were happy parents. And Vernon called Hillary one day. And he said, He said, you know, I'm from Atlanta. She said, of course I do. She said, well, I want some grits. He said, you got any grits down there? She said, well, I don't have it in the house, but we can sure get some. He said, good, I'll be there in the morning. Make me some grits for breakfast. True story. He got on the plane and flew there because he was worried about us, because I had only been governor 2 years and I'd been voted out. And it was rough. It was not unlike the events of the last several years. And I even had one of my major appointees look at me coming down the main street of Little Rock and walk across the street so he wouldn't lose his job under the current government. Vernon knew all this. How he found out about it, I don't know. So he came for breakfast, and we fed him his grits, and bacon and eggs and biscuits too. And he told Hillary what he thought she should do if we wanted to go on in public life. He told me what he thought I should do. And he said, you know, you can't do everything you want to do in politics. You've got to decide what's most important and what the system will bear and how you can help the most people. And getting yourself beat saying the most right things is not as important as helping the most people. And he hugged Hillary, put his arm around me, walked out the door, took a cab to the airport, and flew home. He came all the way there to have breakfast with two people that he liked and cared about. And because he was in the Arkansas bar, he knew the political history of our state. Nobody had ever been elected governor, beat, and then been elected to anything again. I had like nada prospects. He didn't care about that. His job was to do what he thought was right. And then we rocked along a while, and you know, he was busy, I was busy. Vicki was growing, and Shirley was in dealing with her health challenges, and he had a big role to play. And things were happening for us. I got reelected in 1982 and stayed for a decade. Well, in 1991, Vernon called me and he said, "Are you going to run for president?" I said, "I don't think so." I said, "George Bush is at 70-something% in the polls." And he said, "Well, just in case," he said, "you know, I'm in this Bilderberg group. And we had these meetings every year, and all these really interesting people from Europe come, and you need to know who they are." So he said, "I want you to come to the meeting." I said, "Where is it?" He said, "Baden-Baden." I said, "I've always wanted to see that town. It's a beautiful little spa." So I went. Vernon introduced me to everybody. And I thought, how cool is this? This guy who grew up as he did, and as he pointed out, not poor, but starting lower middle class, and thanks to his mother's catering business becoming middle class, learned how to strive and strive well. And he was introducing me to all these people. So that happened. And I met somebody who was a friend of his there. I remember who it was. It was Esther Cooper Smith from Washington. And she was on her way to Moscow to see Boris Yeltsin elected president of Russia. And she said, "You want to come?" And I said, "I don't think so. I got to go home. I got a day job." And Vernon said, No, you need to go see this. This is important." Now, that's one thing. So it looks like the dream foretold. I'm going to tell you the flip side of that. One day, Vernon called me on the phone, and he said, "You know Danny Griffith?" I said, "Yeah, I know Danny Griffith." I said, "I went to high school with him. We grew up together. He's a nice man." He said, "Well, he lives in Atlanta now, and I went down there for Nabisco," I think he said, "and he picked me up." And so I started asking him questions, like he did everybody he ever came in contact with. I started asking him questions, and I asked him if he knew you. He said, "Yeah, we grew up together." He said, "I just want to make sure he did." "You think he's a good guy?" I said, "I do, a lot." He said, "I do too. He's the smartest guy that's been driving me around in a good while." So you didn't have to be important to attract his interest. My nephew, Tyler, when word of Vernon's passing broke in the news, sent me a text saying, "I always loved that man. He made me feel special." Vernon knew he'd had a tough childhood, and he wanted to see for himself that he believed in himself and his future. And then I started getting texts from random people who had met Vernon through Hillary or Chelsea or me, just saying how sorry they were. Why is that? Because he could walk and chew gum at the same time. He could be ambitious for himself and his family and still care about every single person whose life he took, and use his ambition and success to hold up as a mirror to them of what they might become. He could root himself in the institutions that had given meaning to his life, like the Black Church and this university, or DePaul, and still know that you had to go beyond the institution sometimes. He could look at you and you would think you were the only person in the room, but the whole time, he wasn't being insincere, but the whole time he had the mental and emotional ability to be floating up here somewhere, seeing you in the context of his history, America's history, whatever you were talking about. He would root it so he could give good advice, but you would think you could do better, but you weren't better than anybody else. It was uncanny, eerie. I never saw anybody. It was like, watching Toscanini or listening to Pavarotti sing or something. And he was conscious of some of this, but not all of it. It was there. And I started digging in Vernon Can Read last night, and I came across this. I thought I remembered it, and I finally found it. He said, "One of the strangest parts of being in public life is that people who don't know you believe they know you." He said, "It's understandable. We all try to make sense of the world we live in, and we're just curious about other people. So inevitably, from whatever snippets of information we get," he said, "a storyline grows up around a famous person. The image is often wrong. The image often has, quote, very little or nothing to do with the person described." At the time, he was upset because he thought stereotypes about black people and about the fact that his first home was in a project meant that in order for people to appreciate him, he had to have been dirt poor. And he said, by the standards of my area, I was not dirt poor. And people don't understand that the projects were not always places where we isolated poor people. There were people of all levels of education and skills. But I spent a lifetime studying him and listening to him. I was always being surprised. Chelsea told me this morning, I said, anything you want me to say about Vernon? She said, yeah, when I went home to New York, after I got out of Stanford and then got out of Oxford and I went to work, he just called me at random times, but on a regular basis to have breakfast or lunch, because he knew I was just starting out. I was in a tough environment, and I wanted to make a go of it, and he'd check on me. I never knew that because Vernon honored her privacy the way he did mine or yours. He just found a way. So the point of all that is you have to know why you feel these things. And I think it's because more than virtually anybody I ever met in my life, maybe anybody, he became a man in full. He maximized his own abilities. He maximized his own achievements. He built a great family and lost his first wife to a debilitating illness after taking the best care of her he could. And then he met Ann, and for years she saved him, and then he did his part. Along the way, he found people like Hillary and me that he just liked and believed in. And it was second nature for him to stick up for them and support them and help them. I always kidded him that he really just loved Hillary better than me, and he had to help me because I was kind of an add-on. And he said, I was hoping you'd never figure that out. Our conversations would not do very well in the public light today because we were not so politically correct, but I did get permission from Vicki to tell this one story. You know, Vernon and I spent a ridiculous amount of time on the golf course. And it was a joy. Although I think his favorite matches were just when he and Ann would go out alone. But we were playing one day, and this is 25 or 30 years ago when he was still strong as an ox and can every now and then hit the ball to kingdom come. And I said, Vernon, you're on the Callaway board. And Ely Callaway was a friend of both of ours. I said, you know, he gives you great golf clubs. And Vernon had these huge hands, so he had to have his golf clubs specially made. It was quite an experience grabbing his golf clubs. But I said, you know, you keep shanking these balls and throwing away 15 strokes around anyway. And if you just take a few lessons, you could be a really good golfer. And since you invest so much time and effort and you get so much out of it, why don't you do that? And he looked at me. I mean, he didn't break a smile or anything. He said, it is my last civil rights struggle. I said, what do you mean? He said, I am determined to destroy the stereotype that all black people are great athletes. I think what he was determined to do is not to work any harder at it than he had to. He'd worked hard all his life. He'd worked hard. He had to think hard about 1,000 other things. I think he liked doing something that was pretty and helpful and fun, and he didn't have to think about. Vernon Jordan was worthy of our love and admiration because he was a man in full. He proved you did not have to choose between being good at business or law and believing they should both be more inclusive, more open, more on the forefront of positive social change. That you didn't have to choose between standing up for what you believe is right and treating everybody you met, including people you had no political agreements with, as a decent human being. That's why I like that Alfalfa Club. Heck, he made me go to that thing one time. I couldn't believe it. But he loved it, and he said, you know, this town is obsessed with politics, and we're turning each other into cartoons. And it's hurting the country. He said, I do this because the people on the other side are still people, and the crazier things get, the more I want to try to bring them back to personhood. I want us to see each other as people again. He never felt the need to be riven with anger at people that he thought were badly wrong. He was better at that than anyone I have ever known except Nelson Mandela. And I think he did it for the same reason Mandela did. In the end, Vernon Jordan was in the freedom business. The future business was about freedom. The education business was about freedom, to make choices, to fall in love with people you wanted to fall in love with, to do things you wanted to do. And he realized, as Mandela did, that if he hated other people, he would never be free. That reconciliation was better than resentment. That redemption and reclamation was better than cancellation. Anyway, for whatever it's worth, I think my story, Hillary's story, Chelsea's story, Ursula's story, Ken's story, every other story you have heard today, every single one, is the story of how Vernon tried to help us all be more free. And how for him it was as natural as breathing because it was the only way he could feel more free. He knew he had some gifts that were unique, and he knew he'd been helped along the way. He knew how to make the most of being in an institution and going beyond it. And he did it with the beauty of any classical artist or athlete, with the beauty of the theories of Isaac Newton and Einstein, with understanding the emerging cosmos. God, we were lucky he was here. Lucky he was our friend. Lucky that in this imperfect world, somehow he found us and we found him. When they closed that coffin today, I felt like a part of my heart was going to be pulled out of my body. I felt like a man who had loved my wife and daughter with honor and helped them in a way I will never be able to describe, all the while doing everything else he was supposed to do. I just didn't want to let him go. But I realized that there was a season that had come. And when he gave that speech right here at Howard, he said, he basically said, before you know it, I'm going to go, and the rest of you got to get the show on the road. So remember that. You help others and help yourself. You work through institutions and go beyond them and make them better. And in the end, you do it because only when, like Vernon, you are a person in full, can you be free. Finally, my friend, you're free. I miss you, I love you, and I thank you.
Take me to the King. I don't have much to bring. My heart is torn in pieces. It's my offering. Take me to the King. Truth is, I'm tired. Options are few. I'm trying to pray, but where are you? I'm all churched out, hurt and abused. I can't fake what's left to do. Truth is, I'm weak, no strength to fight, no tears to cry, even if I try. But still my soul refuses to die. One touch will change my life. Take me to the King. I don't have much to bring. My heart is torn in pieces. It's my offering. Lay me at the throne. Leave me there alone to gaze upon your glory and sing to you this song. Please take me to the King. Truth is, it's time to stop playing these games. We need a word for the people's pain. So Lord, speak right now. Let it fall like rain. Oh yeah, we're desperate. We're chasing after you. Oh yeah, no rules, no religion. I've made my decision to run to you, the healer that I need. Oh, take me to the King. I don't have much to bring, and my heart is torn in pieces. It's my offering. Leave me there. I want to gaze upon your
Again, I'd like to thank the Jordan family for bringing Vernon Jordan back home to this place that he loved. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of our chairman of our Board of Trustees, Mr. Larry Morris, who's here with us. I'd like to thank all that has taken place. Now let us prepare our hearts and our minds for prayer. We thank you, O God, for what our eyes have seen, our ears have heard, and our hearts have felt. We thank you for the life of Mr. Vernon Jordan. And now I said to the one who stood at the gate, give me a light that I may go out into the darkness and into the unknown. And she replied to me, go out into the darkness, go out into the unknown, but put your hand in the hand of God, and God shall be for you better than light and much safer than a known way. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and give you peace, both now and forevermore. Amen.